And so we want to talk about that. There's been an enormous amount of discussion about how technology is actually shortening kids' attention span and kind of making it harder for them to sit still. And you do need to use new tools to kind of focus them. So let's just begin. And what's the potential out there? And what's the thing that's most exciting to you about using new media to help our youngest learners?
Yeah, so I think the first thing we need to establish, Mary, is that kids are literally wearing media as part of their costumes. It's not a question of whether or not they're consuming media, it's how are we going to take these new media and turn them into powerful learning opportunities. For example, the average 2-year-old is watching 2 hours of media on some kind of a screen every day. The average 4-year-old, 4 hours. According to the Kaiser Foundation, the average 8-year-old, 7.5 to 8 hours. So we can't be Pollyannas and say that they should consume less, but what we need to do is to take a look at the consumption and rebalance it, to think about the variety of ways in which mobile media can advance children's learning from outside of school, inside of school. We need to connect learning across traditional divides. We need to take the power of storytelling by educational media companies like my own to be able to tell stories in more powerful ways so that the word gap that we heard so much about this morning in early childhood can be closed. We need to figure out the different ways in which community institutions led by teachers and after-school providers can take technology and integrate it in a new way into their offerings. We have a great start on a powerful early childhood movement and a great early childhood system, but it's missing something. I think it's missing the power of technology.
So let's talk about some of the most exciting things you've seen in new technology. I mean, whether it's for learning languages or vocabulary, what really, just some specific things that you think that maybe a lot of parents don't even know yet.
Yeah, our own research shows that when embedded, when connected to a fine early childhood program, if you use mobile media, for example, take the power of the Muppets to teach children that C is for cookie, but C is also for carrots. That you could take learning in a different direction by adding a dimension. We did a research study out in California with 100 parents around emerging literacy skills, and we found that by using the mobile phone to call parents, every day, and to get them to scaffold their children's learning with pointing out in the grocery store, pointing out in the car, or pointing out while they were cooking. Yeah, sorry about the feedback. Should I just turn this off? Oh. Okay. Is that better for you all? Okay. That if you create these magical moments with powerful storytellers, that you actually begin to see the needle on emerging literacy skills grow. We've been doing some research with a mobile phone partner, Nokia, to introduce the fact that 3 generations of adults and children can read together if we use the Muppets to tell a story that engages both the parent, the grandparent, and the child.
From different locations?
Yeah, from different locations, using Skype or using the internet. So what you see is that a grandparent who wants to play a role in supporting their children's healthy growth and development often is remote or often doesn't have the currency to have a conversation with their 4-year-old. And an intermediary, a powerful teacher, would be a Muppet, for example. We're looking at research from the U.S. Department of Education now, which is showing that if you can create more powerful supports for teachers by using educational media to embed within their classrooms, that reading skills, go up.
When Sesame Street first was founded, there were only 2 programs on television, right, for preschool, and now there's over 75.
That's right. You had Mr. Rogers, and you had Sesame Street in 1969.
So does this, people talk about this information overload. At one hand, it's a wonderful thing because you have a lot to pick from. But on the other hand, how does a parent and a teacher pick what is best for their child?
Yeah, it's a very powerful question because there isn't great information out there to guide parents. There are an increasing number of sources, including the sesamestreet.org site, which has a very special section for parents who want information about what's appropriate. Common Sense Media does ratings of children's media in which they point out the safety and the age-appropriate level. They're also beginning to develop standards for educational value, but it's difficult. We did a scan of 288 so-called educational media products in 2009. They were marketed as educational. When we took a deep dive to take a look at those advertising claims, 3 of them had substantial evidence to back up the educational value that they were claiming. That's not to say that any of these things were harmful. They were just going beyond the scope of where the evidence took them. So I think that it's incumbent upon educational media producers like Sesame Workshop and others at PBS and so on to create more transparency, as well as the other companies that are claiming educational value around what is the actual educational impact. The workshop also is going to be creating many more resources for early educators in the future.
And is one of the gifts of technology that really it's a delivery mechanism? So if you, instead of flashcards, you have it on your iPhone, right? You can, essentially you have iPhone flashcards now, or you're still reading, Grandma's still reading Cat in the Hat, but now she can do it long distance on Skype?
Yeah, so I'm not a big fan of flashcards. At the beginning, they serve a purpose when you're trying to drill a child to learn a certain skill. But that said, there are lots of new applications that are being built. What's happening in the media consumption of young children is that around age 6, 7, children are making a move from the internet and television towards mobile media. And we just did some research on the top 100 applications that are on the iTunes and the iPad store. Of those, 60% are geared towards kids under the age of 8. So producers are beginning to, 60% of these applications are for kids under 8, which really surprised us. And we began to document something that we're beginning to see with young children 3 to 5, even younger, although it may not be appropriate, that adults are passing back their mobile media. We call it the pass-back effect. So you'll see in a car or in a grocery store or just while mom and dad are preparing dinner or doing something else, that mobile device, and the iPad is only 2 years old, is being passed to the child. And what we're concerned about is that while the pass-back is appropriate in many instances, that the pass-back be monitored and supported with a balanced approach with limits set for the consumption.
And if you were going out to buy something tomorrow, some piece of technology for my 3-year-old nephew, for instance, what would you buy?
Well, first of all, it has to be something that's within the family sort of pattern of communication and interaction. The technology by itself is fairly neutral. What we want to do is to connect the technology to other learning moments. You guys saw Cookie Monster a few minutes ago. Well, did you know that Cookie's on a diet? It's not really, Saturday Night Live called him the Pilates monster. He's not giving up cookies, but he realizes, as all families and all children should, that cookies are a sometimes food, and there are anytimes foods like fruits and vegetables. The same analog, I think, is an important one to keep in mind in terms of media consumption. So if your 3-year-old is someone who is deeply curious about technology, I don't think there's any problem in connecting them to ebooks or different kinds of educational applications, or even just fun and entertaining educational applications. But it needs to be embedded within an experience within the home where the family is engaged in reading. Reading is an anytime food also. Cooking with your family is an anytime food. Playing is an anytime food. Technology can extend those experiences. It doesn't need to replace them.
And how much is too much? I think there's an enormous amount of parents and teachers are worried about too much screen time. Yeah. What do you think the guidelines?
I think that there is too much consumption of screen time among many children today. So I am concerned about that. But I'm even more concerned about, as I said, the balance of the types of activities that children are engaged in. Number one, there must be much less screen time that's isolated screen time. We need to figure out a way in which families are united. We're doing a lot of research, as I suggested before, on intergenerational play. When Mrs. Cooney founded the workshop over 40 years ago, she had this fundamental insight about television that you could create it on the basis of 2 generations, funny jokes that went ahead, went above the heads of the 4-year-olds. Fast music, advertising jingles were something that sort of stimulated her to think about the way in which TV could be a powerful teacher. So back then, mom and child were watching television together because far fewer moms were working. Now, family life is more complicated, more stressed. Mom is out of the household, so there's less television co-viewing around educational values. So we need to figure out, can the digital technologies encourage that kind of intergenerational play? We're doing some interesting research on that right now.
And I mean, how about social media and tweeting? I mean, is this now going to be part of early learning?
So the data on tweeting is that it's much more of an adult thing at this point. Even middle school and high school kids are much less prominent tweeters. I don't know what movement that's going to go into, but I should mention that Cookie Monster and Elmo both have about 1 million followers on Twitter. So obviously, some older children are still interested in the comments and the perspectives of the Muppets. But I think that Twitter is actually a really helpful tool to use in school for older kids, particularly around literacy lessons. There are all sorts of different ways of using Twitter to prompt, short subject literature.
Just for example?
Well, I mean, I'm aware of teachers who are using, Twitter to challenge kids to do poetry, challenge kids to, use their journalistic, talents to, write headlines about a whole variety of different current events. So it's become a useful tool. It's also obviously a useful tool in teaching kids about the world because there's so many interesting documentations that are going on around what's happening in different parts of the world at any one time.
And how about Facebook? What are the latest things? I mean, my kids do study groups on Facebook, but it seems like there's always something new there.
Yeah, I mean, they just redesigned it in ways that people are complaining about. We've actually about to release a paper, the Cooney Center, on the use of social networks for learning. It's one of the next, if mobile media was the hot thing of last year, I think what's called networked participation and social learning from media is coming very, very fast. So we've been documenting how virtual worlds and social media virtual worlds like Club Penguin or Yville and Facebook are actually an opportunity for kids to learn. We don't know a lot yet about the educational value of the learning, and some educators are concerned about sort of the shorthand, of Facebook or the shorthand of different kinds of virtual worlds as well as the commercialization. But this research that we're about to release in November will say a few things about where studies have shown actual gains that children make around literacy learning, for example.
And there will be gains.
It's contested. Some people say that there are gains when, again, embedded within a robust educational program. Used as social communication by itself, kids are learning things. But if it's not intentional, Mary, it's really hard to grasp what the achievement trajectory will be from that.
And are you still positive and upbeat about this information overload in the digital age? I mean, it seems to me that my own attention span is kind of diminished. So is this tougher for kids to kind of stay focused and learn?
Can you repeat your question? No.
Very good.
Look, people are more distracted. I think a lot of this has to do with the cues that kids get from their parents. Parents are stressed out, working longer hours. There's a lot of negative modeling going on around, media multitasking and the lack of engagement. So, I mean, the first rule of thumb is that parents need to relax a little bit, employers need to relax a little bit in terms of the demands and to spend more time, interacting with their children. But I just think that there's no turning back on this. I think that we are rewiring brains in some ways that people are monitoring. We're looking at some of the positive ways in which, early learning and brain development, intersect with caring and loving parenting, right now. I think that neuroscientists are taking a look at that. So there's no putting the genie back in the bottle, but there are folks who need to monitor what that genie does when that genie comes out. I mean, they're not just going to blink and create some sort of a new society for us. We need to be vigilant. We need to be active. We need to figure out how to encourage investment in the kind of research and development that's necessary to tell us exactly under what conditions and for whom technology will work best. One of the things I'm fond of saying is that our kids are in a Jetsonian age, and our research enterprise is more like in the Flintstones. So we gotta catch up in terms of the research and practice, but the kind of research that we're doing at Sesame Workshop and the Cooney Center and many other wonderful organizations that are represented here are trying to point a pathway towards unleashing the potential of educational technologies. The last thing that I'll say about this is I'm worried about the fact that early learning is associated with technology fears. And I don't think that we need to be worried about technology the way that we have been in the early learning field. We need to embrace it and control it because it's a fact of life. And there's a series of new technology guidelines that are being issued early next year by the National Association for the Education of Young Children and the Fred Rogers Center, which will be extremely useful guidance for the positive ways to use technology and some of the watch-outs as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. We are going to give you a break. We have a short video from Sesame Street that we're going to watch. And you can please continue eating, and then we're going to hear from Roberto Rodriguez from the White House. But it was a real pleasure to have you here. You may have noticed on your program that we thought Gary Nell was coming. He's the CEO of Sesame Street. And he got a big job just about 48 hours ago. It was announced that he was running NPR. So this was our gift that you came. Thank you very, very much, Michael Levine.
Thanks.
In 1969, one little street launched a revolution in children's education by using television as a tool for learning. Over 40 years later, the most trusted brand among parents continues to meet children's educational needs through new and emerging technology.
Oh, I'ma keep my head up high, keep on reaching high, never gonna quit, I'll keep getting stronger.
From our award-winning television show,
Welcome to Sesame Street.
to our award-winning website,
You're here! Yay!
Sesame Street is a safe place where parents and kids can watch videos, play games, and much more.
Okay, hang on a minute. I'll help you find the really rut one. Here we go.
Learning can even happen on the go with our mobile site customized for portability. Our top-rated podcasts offer a wide range of teachable moments from letter recognition to vocabulary to healthy habits.
Good hygiene is very healthy.
Sesame Street mobile apps make learning fun and interactive.
Can you give me eyes and a nose?
To give your monster eyes, touch it where the eyes should go.
Nice one.
And everyone can follow their furry friends on Twitter and Facebook.
Boy, if me had Cookie for every friend me have, me be set for life.
The little street that began it all is not so little after all. Every day, Sesame Street continues to look for new, innovative ways to make learning fun, engaging, and accessible so that children all over the world may reach their highest potential.